would make absolute sense for me to talk about the time my doctor gave me the crushing glaucoma diagnosis, or the moment I first opened my eyes after that major eye surgery, which I had prayed would save my eyesight. It would be perfectly natural for me to take you back to the time when I won my first music award, or talk about my viral submission in the Senate at the height of the Gen Z anti-government protest this year. Maybe the story of how I was named Time Magazine's top 100 most influential leaders of the next generation. Or even the first time I fell in love. But in case you haven't already noticed, I do tend to see things differently. I find that my most important milestones are not the advertised ones. They're not the mountains I climbed, nor the Goliaths I conquered. No longer walking by sight has brought me to a place where I now see milestones in private moments. I see the moment I first opened my white cane. For a long time, because of my fierce independence, I resisted and ran away from admitting that I needed help. And taking that first step towards a modicum of independence meant scrambling to save 65 pounds to take to the shop. First of all, 65 pounds when you're fresh out of university is just oppressive. And second of all, I was like, surely God, why must you allow hard things to also be expensive? So I bought the bloody thing somewhere in London and brought it back home to Mombasa and did what any sensible person newly into disability would do. With all of its packaging and helpful manuals, I carefully stuffed it in the back of my wardrobe, right next to my vikoi and my deras and my fragile inner child. I hid my white cane away. It was only the year after that when my brother Kelvin came over to visit one day and saw me bashing around into tables and chairs. Did he say, "Yo, didn't you buy a white cane recently?" "Yes, I did, yes." "Okay, well, if you're not going to use it, then can I check it out?" So I got it out to the back of my wardrobe. He closed his eyes and started messing around with it, walking all about the house. And, of course, he was doing it all wrong. And I was like, look at this guy, struggling to use a white cane. Surely. "Fine," he said, "you show me how it works then." And I was like, I will. So I grabbed it, and all of a sudden I was like, pew! Across the house, it's like, showing him how it's done. And that was the very moment I first opened my white cane. It was a long time after that when I realized what he had done for me in that moment. He saw the heart-wrenching pain that I was pretending to have a handle on and held space for me to crawl into it for however long it needed to take me. I see the moment I was ready to give up music, like done. It was at the table over Christmas lunch, with family, with food, conversation, and out of nowhere, I looked up and just said, I think I'm going to quit music. An awkward silence befell the table, of course. Then everyone breathed again and said, what? Music just wasn't taking me to where I wanted to be. And as hard as I tried and tried, being a disabled female artist who didn't twerk and preferred to perform her cha-cha while barefoot just wasn't very sexy, you know what I mean? So, of course, my family tried talking me out of it by reminding me of all the amazing things I had achieved so far. But I was resolved that the 31st of December that year would be the last. Literally, a week into the I get a call from someone I hadn't spoken to in like 8 years, Mike Rabah. And he asked me if I still sing. Yes. He says he's producing a big gig for the Ministry of Sports, and he wants me to write a theme song, which would become the event anthem. Then he wanted me to come over with my team to shoot the music video and headline the event itself. In 2 days flat, I composed, I wrote, I recorded, and produced the song in my home studio. Then I drove to Diani with the gang and performed the heck out of that song. Okay. Nina Jijua ended up being the official theme song in memory of the late, great world champion, Agnes Tirop. And on the last night, when everything was said and done at the event, I remember sitting on the balcony by the beach with Melvin, my brother and my manager, and Candy and Vincent, feet up, in complete awe of what we had somehow managed to pull off out of nowhere. That was the moment I was ready to give up music. I also see the moment I reconciled with my father. It was around Father's Day, and every Sunday that month, my church dedicated the preaching to sermons about fathers. I led the worship team there at the time, so after church, we would stay back until every chair was cleared in the auditorium was empty. I got a ride back to my parents' house and rummaged through their fridge for some leftover lunch. My dad was sat at his usual spot at the table, and we were in total silence, which, by the way, was normal because we hadn't the best of relationships basically forever. You see, since I was a kid, my dad was quite a distant man. He didn't show affection. He had his favorite child, and the rest of us just spent our time steering clear of his acute criticism, anger, his sharp words. Most anything could set him off if we weren't careful. Nothing I did felt like it was ever good enough. Not my grades, not my singing at church, not my awards at prize-giving days, not my leadership positions in school, not my carefully handwritten letters or cards to him on special occasions, and definitely not my tiny bits of affection from a little girl to her father. And when I came of age with a moderate amount of confidence and began to stand up to him and sheepishly leaning to the debates, let's just say my mom would busy herself in the kitchen and only came out once the dust had settled. So that Sunday afternoon in 2022, with pin drop silence, which was normal, we paid each other no mind. And I sat on the dining room floor, as I always do. I put on a YouTube video and quietly ate my lunch. As I stretched out and laid on the floor after that, I remember reflecting on that day's sermon about forgiving our fathers. In that moment, I remember feeling convicted to say something, but I talked to God and said, I can't start this conversation. I don't even know how to start it because I know him. He will interrupt, he'll dismiss, he'll criticize, he'll defend, and eventually yell me down. But if you open the door, God, I promise I'll step into it. And I kid you not, within like 5 minutes, I had a soft, Chris, are you busy watching your videos? I was like, no, Dad, what do you need? And in that moment, he just started talking. I don't know how. But he opened up his heart. He was about to go to town that afternoon, and the taxi was outside waiting for him. But he then spent an hour and a half just talking to me in the dining room. And he made himself accountable to stuff. He shared stuff from his childhood, from when he was a young parent and husband. And though he conceded in some areas, he did admit to others. And you know how, if you could maybe measure open-heartedness and vulnerability from a scale of 0 to 100, 100 being absolutely heart on your sleeve, my dad was sort of at like 12.25. But for him, that was a big deal. And I really appreciated his effort in that moment. I imagine he had a vulnerability hangover for a few days after that. But that was the moment I started afresh with my father, whom I love greatly. I see the moment I fully trusted that I could be a good mother one day. My 2-year-old nephew, Niall, had brought his mother, my sister, to visit us one holiday. And there was one day in particular that she really wanted time to herself, right? To get her hair done and go shopping. Now, for context, because of my disability, I had always been terrified that I would be an inadequate mother, that I wouldn't be able to see my child smile or mirror with reassuring eye contact. I wouldn't see my child sleeping in the wrong position, for example, or about to get bitten by the dog. I was worried that they would choke on food and I wouldn't be able to see it, or just crawl away without me noticing. So that morning, when my sister asked that I take care of Niall, I was like, as in for the whole day? Or... So because I love swimming, I decided that's what we're going to do. Go to Kelvin's house, where there was a pool, and use it while he was in court. We would eat and swim and then play until Niall surrendered with exhaustion and then take a monster nap. That was my plan. And by that time, surely she would be back and I could safely deliver her child back to her with no shipping costs, of course. I got his bag ready. All my assistive technology was in place. My white cane faith in my hand, then looked him right in the face. And thank God my sister and I, by the way, could pass as twins, because the illusion and confusion it created for Niall, at least it changed the game that day, gave me some leeway, because he thought he was with his mom. Then I said, right now, let's do this. That was the moment gifted to me by my sister. This will be the first time she will hear me say this, actually. How much I appreciated that day. A day out with my 100% dependent nephew, with her full trust in my ability to mother him on my own. In that moment, I was given an opportunity to pull out a version of myself that I wouldn't have known existed without having been left with no other choice but to find it inside me. My milestones live in those and many more quiet, unseen moments that are never spoken of but speak to me. Moments which have gently taught me that familiar is not necessarily brave, and that similar is not automatically safe. I've been given the opportunity to understand that there are things inside of you that only the unfamiliar can call out of you, that you have to be willing to go in order for God to pull it out of you. Yes, I am visually impaired, but I'm not vision impaired. Where people may see loss, I see freedom. You may see what is gone, but I see what has been given. Where people pity the pain of disability, I play in the moments of pleasure. And although many of our cultures still believe our lives are a waste, I see our lives as a treasure. Hand on my heart, this point of view that I've been given through my disability is sublime. You should try and just close your eyes and you'll be able to see it. Thank you very, very much. Shukran.